Okay. How's everyone doing today? I hope everyone is doing well. I'm glad to be back here once again for episode 9 of this week's Cannabis Talk. And yeah, today is kind of an interesting one just because today we're going to be talking about cannabis in the workplace. You know, cannabis is still federally legal here in the US. It's actually fully legal up in Canada. And that seems to be where I pulled most of my research from, given the fact that it is legal up there, so they can do the research for it. And given that there isn't much research right now, just because it's probably not too big of a problem up there. But, you know, it sparked my interest a little bit just because it is legal up there. It kind of made me curious as to if it made a difference between, people that do smoke cannabis and people that don't smoke cannabis. Like I said, given the fact that Canada has legalized up there, they haven't done too much research going into legalization as far as, if people that do use cannabis, if they're more accident prone or it makes them better at their job. I read a few articles as I was doing my research, and I was getting a lot of mixed data sets. So basically what I was seeing was that, while they would try to conduct these studies, they weren't the most accurate given the fact that they were doing the studies in different ways for each control group. So basically from that, they haven't really been able to have a clear consensus on if cannabis, makes you more accident prone or not. One of them being the Institute for Work and Health. Now, like I said, they're actually one of the biggest drug testing companies for major businesses. And even from their own evidence, because they do pretty much everything through a urine test, which for those of you that don't know, with a urine test, it doesn't really show when you consumed. It more so shows you if it's in your system or not. It's more so something that would be used for, drug testing, like athletes and stuff like that. In this case, it's not really the same because, you're not necessarily testing for if they have smoked or consumed cannabis in their lifetime or in the 4 months or 5 months, however. It's not more so when you consume, but have you consumed, put it like that. There has only been one set of data compiled by that large private drug testing company. And basically, the only thing that they found is that there has been an increase in cannabis use, but not necessarily if the cannabis use stunts their I wouldn't say it stunts their growth, but makes them less productive at the workplace. So already right there, like I said, some inconsistent data from what they're getting. And in 2017, the US National Academy of Sciences published a major report on the health effects of cannabis, including the impacts on injuries and accidents in the workplace. And based off of 6 studies that they've done, the review still didn't find enough evidence to support or refute the link between cannabis use and productivity. So, like I said, this stuff is still being well researched, and they're still working on building up a consistent data set to show whether or not, like I said, if cannabis is beneficial. So for Canada, for every workplace, they have this thing called duty to accommodate. And that basically entails, if someone needs to take prescription drugs throughout the day, doesn't matter what they're doing. But if they need to take prescription drugs throughout the day, then they need the time in order to do so. So it's the same thing like how it is for taking a cigarette break, It's the exact same thing, which is amazing to me because the article that I was reading, Yes, right here, and I will show you guys that right now. It says, does the duty to accommodate extend to medical marijuana? Yes, uh, the duty to accommodate as required by the federal human rights legislation extends to disabled employees who use medical marijuana. These employees are to be accommodated in the same way as an employer accommodates any other disabled employee who has prescribed medication. Accommodation is also required for employees who may have an addiction disability. Now, what that looks like it entails to is pretty much, smoking cigarettes. So, but just like anything, it will have its limits. So, which are right here. You can't be impaired. Obviously, smoke to where you're to a point where you can't even work, which is obvious. Not entitled to an employee to compromise his or her safety or the safety of others. This actually goes back to what I was going to talk about. Safety sensitive workplaces like operating in construction, which I actually had one of the people that voted in on the poll that I had on Twitter, and they had a response basically that he works in construction, and it actually does make a difference when people do consume cannabis and then go to work right after that, and they consume it to a point where it makes them counterproductive to their job. And in turn, people have gotten hurt from that. So, it's being smart with it and using it in moderation, like how you would anything. I was actually talking to one of my coworkers today where she was saying that even in her line of work, which was in the federal government, she would experience coworkers that would, drink and binge drink all night and then come to work reeking of alcohol, but yet all cut, shaven, and looking good, and still yet able to do their job. So I mean, why can't it be the same for people that use cannabis? Finish up these little bullet points here. A prescription for medical marijuana does not entitle an employee to smoke in the workplace. Obviously not. It's not like you can smoke a cigarette inside your work anyway. So a prescription for medical marijuana does not entitle an employee to be to unexcused absences or late arrivals. Of course not. And the employer is, however, required to attempt to find suitable workplace accommodation for disabled employees who have prescription for medical marijuana use, just as would be required for any other disabled employee with a medical drug prescription, which makes perfect sense. And that is exactly how it should be regulated. The facts are all right there for you. It should just be regulated just like how any other prescription drug would be, because in a way, for some people, it is their prescription drug. While it may not be prescribed to you by an actual doctor, it was medicine first before it became recreational, at least here in California. So actually, I do kind of want to go back into Canada's laws and how they incorporate cannabis into the workplace, or how it is incorporated into the workplace. So what I also found was that their policies for when you can, or how many hours it should be before you consume, or at least how many hours it should be from when you consume cannabis to when you go into work. The way they came up with these things was kind of interesting, because just to show you guys what I've read, at least. So now, for a person that is, a responsible stoner, let's put it like this, a productive stoner, they know not to come in, going to work super blazed, or just, overly medicated to a point where they can't work at all. But that time frame is different for everybody, just based off of their tolerance level and their metabolism. And, even straight up down to their DNA system can depend on, how long it takes for you to get high, and for how long it is for your high to last. So going back into the research, the lower risk cannabis use guidelines for Canada suggests a 6-hour waiting period from when you consume cannabis to when you go into work. Now, 6 hours actually seems like a pretty decent amount of time. No lie, actually. Now, given the fact that my work at a dispensary is a lot different, and most of our employees, including myself, like when we go on our breaks, it's a little smoke break for us too. It's just like how it is with, I'm sure how it is for any other place that uses a cigarette break as the same thing. But we know, as especially employees that work in the cannabis industry, we know how to consume or know how much to consume to allow us to be able to still work and be able to get our job done at the same time. Like I said, it's different for everyone, and that 6 hour period for the most part is good, but 6 hours is a long time, especially like it's not like you can go out to lunch and then smoke and then come back to work, because that's a 6 hour time period. Your job is practically done by then. And then and it gets crazier as I'll go down, no lie. So the Occupational and Environmental Medicine Association of Canada, they actually say 24 hours. Now, that would make it literally impossible for someone that actually does need to medicate, whether they have glaucoma, whether they have, back pains or whatever that makes that they need cannabis for. And a 24-hour time period doesn't even allow them to consume at any point in the day. Because, by the time you consume it, at max it'll be like 10 hours or 12, not a whole 24 hours before you come into work. Which is amazing to me, because it's like, there are people that have their glass of red wine or, a scotch or some whiskey at the end of the night just to, ease their stresses throughout the day, or have anything else. But I'm just saying, like, 24 hours is kind of insane. And these mind you are for safety sensitive jobs. So while 24 hours may be insane, a full on drug free cannabis use policy can be put in for those safety sensitive jobs, just because you are not only dealing with heavy machinery or something like that, you have other people's lives in your hands. That includes like people who operate in construction, like do cranes, truck drivers, people that work in commercial airlines. There's a whole, the list goes on. But like I said, it's just like anyone that unwinds at the end of the day with their glass of wine or whatever should be able to do so with cannabis as well, in any way, shape, or form. So, actually, which brings me into my next one, is that I just thought this was the weirdest thing ever. So, police officers in Vancouver and I think it's Ottawa, Vancouver and Ottawa, they're two cities in Canada, and their police officers actually have no restriction on cannabis use. So they can use cannabis on their freaking coffee break. And as long as they're able to come back and be able to get their job done, then they're fine. Which blew my mind. I'm talking about, they're talking about safety sensitive jobs. You got to wait 24 hours, but yet you have cops in these two cities are able to smoke whenever they want and come back and do their job. What sense does that make? Like, I don't know. But, it's different everywhere, I'm finding. So with officers in Calgary, which is also another city in Canada, they actually have a straight up ban across all of their officers in the city. They cannot smoke or consume any amount of cannabis, period. And then you have officers in Toronto that actually face a 28-day abstinence period. So you are damn near out of a job for a whole freaking month just because you consumed a little bit of cannabis, not even when you were working. It was probably in your off time. But, and this is for an officer's policy, mind you. What is this he said? Whereas I work in the customer service industry, so I think maybe 6 hour wait period isn't that bad. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't think yeah, we're more on the retail side of the cannabis industry, but I feel the same way. But as long as and we had this conversation too before, as long as you consume responsibly and consume within moderation, then you should be fine at any point. 6 hours, yes, is a good period, and should just be the standard law across all businesses. But like I said, they haven't done much research in this, so they need to still kind of figure out what is the right amount of time and and how they should be testing people, as far as when or if they have consumed cannabis. The way they seem to be doing these tests for if cannabis makes you counterproductive or it makes you more accident prone, in the workplace, is that basically when someone gets hurt, that's when they do the test, and the test is a urine sample, which, like I just said, that could date all the way back to 4 or 5 months since you've consumed. So I mean, that doesn't, like I said, doesn't necessarily tell you when you've consumed. That just says if you've consumed, and that doesn't necessarily mean you're even high during the time that you even got hurt. So, yeah, they still haven't developed the technology for that, and it still may be a while, just because for the most part it's on the back burner for even the government as well. It seems like from here on out that they're gonna become that drug-free marijuana policy is going to dissipate as more and more states legalize and the government will eventually legalize, just because it is a medicine. It's a stress reliever, just like how a cigarette would be for someone else. So it's like, why can't someone have their smoke break? Yeah, it does create a high, but I mean, hell, for if anything, you could be smoking a CBD joint and that has no high in it. So it's different for everyone. It's different. For people in the workplace that, decide to, consume cannabis in any way, shape, or form, that could be topicals as well. And topicals, some topicals do actually end up getting in your system and can actually cause you to come up positive for any type of urine test or something like that. Given that there are some topicals that stay on the surface and don't actually enter the bloodstream, for the most part, if you're going to use a topical, you're going to consume cannabis, it's going to get into your system some way, shape, or form, and it will come up on a urine test. Given that this is still a federally illegal drug, it will take some time, in order for it to be accepted into the workplace, and it's just like how the cannabis industry is right now. Everybody's kind of walking on eggshells right now. So while here in the U.S., even though there are states that have legalized, it doesn't change too much of anything for employers. If just like how it would be for someone that drinks a lot, they can't be super wasted when they come to work, obviously. And I think with that duty to accommodate, that can be extended into cannabis to where, like I was saying, you can't be impaired when you come to work. You can't smoke in the workplace. It can't compromise your safety or the safety of others, on and on. Now, on these talks, I'm not encouraging anybody to consume cannabis, especially if it's illegal in your state, which would be a terrible idea. But, I'm just here to provide education for you guys, and for also to not to, change your mind about the cannabis plant, because, it's not all bad. Even though you may have had a bad experience, doesn't mean cannabis is bad overall. I believe that cannabis is for everybody in any way, shape, or form, because you can have psychoactive and non-psychoactive parts of the plant be isolated and put into any way, into any form that you'd like, whether it be smoking, vaping, taking tinctures, topicals, or edibles. There's so many different ways to consume and so many different ways to get cannabinoids into your body, being psychoactive or non-psychoactive. That's why I don't see the point of it in the workplace, because it makes everyone sleepy, relaxed, and lazy in the cases I have heard of. So, which is, in some cases it is true. There are those people who can't consume correctly to a point where they are counterproductive to the workplace. Obviously, those type of people aren't experienced smokers or experienced cannabis users. So, given hopefully they're not working in a safety sensitive workplace, um, it's not really on. Well, it definitely is on the worker, but I mean, it's not on cannabis. It's really because the worker doesn't know how to consume correctly to a point where they can still be productive at work. Now, for me, like I said, I do like sativas because it actually makes me more productive, just because of the specific terpenes that are in it, and that's a whole different tangent within itself. But, that is something that I use on my breaks at work to, keep me going. And that's what keeps me more productive. It's actually the reason why I'm able to be so uppity and active when I'm doing these cannabis talks, because, have a little sativa before the talk, and then I can completely engage with you guys and be fully here, and most of this time, my mind is racing with stuff to talk about and everything like that. So it's like, yeah, it also makes me, a better host for you guys as well. Which is exactly why I feel like normalization on Twitch and normalization just through every platform in general just needs to happen, and we have to do that through education. That's why I do this every week. That's why I'm here for you guys, to give you guys the education that is needed. And the education that you guys are curious for in the first place. I mean, this is the reason why you guys are all here. I mean, yes, you guys support me as well, but you guys are here to, learn something new every day. And as it is with me too, whenever I go into work, I am learning something new as well. Especially with, learning about how cannabis in the workplace is affected for people in all different types of workplaces, in safety sensitive jobs, or even just in the retail area. It's just one of the many reasons on why I love doing this, and the reason why I'm here. We all have our own reasons for consuming cannabis, whether it be for, for your medicinal purposes, or, just to unwind at the end of the day, or, even during work. So it's different. Yeah, it's different for everyone. We all use it for our own reasons. But I think that we should never put off cannabis, or, we should never turn a blind eye, because it's always there. And at the end of the day, our endocannabinoid system needs it. So whether you may not like to consume to get high, you can consume just to bring your body back into homeostasis.